those published stories that he insisted were false. You think it's present day, don't you? Think again. We're talking about the 26th president of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, this has been going on for years. Author Dan Abrams and David Fisher, they got together. They told the story in Theodore Roosevelt for the Defense, the courtroom battle to save his legacy. Dan is also the ABC News chief legal affairs anchor. Joins us now. It's great having you, Dan.
Hey, Sean.
So this isn't your first time following a president into trial. You did it with the New York Times best-selling book called Lincoln's Last Trial. We spoke about that here many moons ago. Let's talk about this latest book about Teddy.
Yeah, so this is a case where Theodore Roosevelt was sued after he was president, so it's 6 years after he's president.
Yeah.
He's sued for libel by the head of the New York Republican Party. He'd formerly been head of the National Republican Party, a guy named William Barnes. Roosevelt had accused him of being corrupt, basically saying that he and the head of the Democratic Party were trying to retain power over a question of whether U.S. senators should be elected by the voters or by the party bosses. And Roosevelt felt that it should be the voters. And he was calling Barnes corrupt for trying to keep the system in place that gave Barnes and people like him that kind of power. And Barnes sued him. Barnes was thinking about his own political career. I think Barnes was eyeing the possibility of running for governor. And he decided he was tired of Teddy Roosevelt attacking him. And he took him to court. As you can imagine, back then, the iconic former president testifying for 8 days, literally taking his life and moving it up to Syracuse, New York for 6 weeks to defend himself. This was front page news everywhere.
This is a trial of the century is probably what they were calling it at the time. Of course, we had like 6 more throughout the century. But this is a pretty big deal back then. I mean, as far as media is concerned in the early 1900s.
Oh, this is huge. I mean, every reporter from every major paper was there. And some of the papers were covering it, I mean, really in depth. The New York Times, for example, had 6 to 12 pages per day on the trial. And remember, this is at the time when we're talking about the buildup to World War I. There already is a war in place, and the U.S. is deciding whether to get involved in the war. And the intersection of that comes to play in the trial when one of the most seminal moments occurs when the Lusitania is sunk by the Germans and over 100 Americans are killed. Roosevelt, during the trial, has to make a decision if he's going to come out and make a statement about it. His concern, his lawyer's concern was there were 3 German Americans on the jury. And back then, if you were German American, you typically had a close association with Germany. And so he was ready. He made a statement blasting the Germans, saying we need to get into the war, and his lawyers were very concerned about the impact that could have on the jury. But it just shows you the intersection of what was happening in the lead up for the U.S. to World War I and this trial in Syracuse, New York.
It's very interesting. So he's being sued for the equivalent of about $1.25 million today. He's on the stand forever. What was the public's reaction to the trial? Were they for Teddy? Were they for the prosecution? Who are they for?
Well, I guess it depended on your political viewpoint. I think that, look, Teddy Roosevelt was very popular at this point in his post-presidency. But, there were definitely people who disliked him and wanted to see him taken down a couple notches. So I think it really depended on your political viewpoint. But there's no question that, having the former president of the United States, the iconic Theodore Roosevelt, in your city, at the time Syracuse, New York, led to some bizarre incidents where, a college band would come by the courthouse and start singing for Teddy. There were just a number of great moments because, as you can imagine, having the former president in a comparatively small city where he doesn't have a direct connection made for a moment where everyone is thinking, my goodness, he's here, and he's here for 6 weeks.
So people's beliefs that are right down party lines, people trying to go viral, it really is like modern day. It's remarkable. Dan, we're looking forward to reading the book, my friend. Congratulations on yet another one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, follow the twists and turns of this high-stakes, high-drama, yet relatively unknown trial from our nation's history. It's Theodore Roosevelt for the defense, the courtroom battle to save his legacy. They are available now wherever great books are sold.